Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fun and Games Podcast. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I'm Matt A.K. Stormageddon.
And you're listening to episode 94. And this episode, we have the literal largest interview we've ever had in this on this show. And by that, I mean we are interviewing the most people at once. We have a few people from Futureproof, which is a difficult company to describe, but we have Leon Barilaro and Scott Bullock, who are both writers and developers for the upcoming PSweet game, as well as Alex Schmey, who is the co-producer and magistrate man of many titles for Futureproof in general. Leon, Scott, Alex, so great to have you here.
Welcome.
Great to be here.
Now, before we dive into things, I would like to give a disclaimer. There is a sort of personal bias in bringing all these people on. Futureproof is a project that I have been working with for a number of years because it has, while PSweet is the first video game to be coming out, Futureproof has existed for several years as a interactive, immersive theatrical project that also encompasses some film. It encompasses a few other areas and avenues as well. And if any of you have a better way to describe it, I've been with this project since the beginning, and I can't elevator pitch it to save my life.
Well, that's my job, so I guess I'll do it.
Take it away, Alex.
Futureproof as a concept was two parts. The first is that when it comes especially to immersive theater and interactive entertainment, we're not really fans of gameplay that has a set ending or an established story arc that is beginning, middle, end. You play it, you're done. We're much more fans of the TTRPG LARP scene of interactive storytelling that you have an active participation in. So for us, anything that we make it has to have pushback, and it has to have user and player and audience engagement that dictates and guides a story. The other major part for me is that all of our Futureproof content needs to be essentially grounded in the real world or in some simulacrum of it. It needs to have an ability to transcend a given platform. So if we do a live immersive show, we will have characters, but those characters need to also have personas on the internet because they exist in a real space. That means they need to have social media accounts. It means that before, during, and after a live event, there needs to be engagement between different characters on those platforms. It means that if it's an organization, say a giant corporation, that corporation needs to have a website, and that website needs to be firmly grounded as a real world item as part of our gameplay. What that all ties together creates a universe where our events do not necessarily need to be theatrical. Although theatrical live is our bread and butter, it also means that we've done stuff that has ranged from murder mystery dinner theater jokes with canapes and a string trio pretending to be a string quartet. We've done full-on parties with built-in beaches and slot cars, and then we've also done fake conventions, we've done movie screenings, and then the hat trick for us is taking all of those and connecting them together into a contiguous, connected world. We've also done a lot of work with digital content in the past, both for supplementing our events. We've also done completely digital-only events. And moving into 2021, because this is a year of darkness and plague and madness, moving forward, one of the things we're really getting into is the idea that any story or experience that we're creating, it's the same basic roots and mechanics and ideals, but what it takes place on doesn't necessarily matter so much. So we can create an interactive experience that is, in its core, an immersive or a theatrical event, but it can be just as easily ported online. It can just as easily be ported into some kind of standalone digital title, and it's something that evolves over time. So with PSweet, while we are not a video game studio by trade, nor do we intend to become a major video game studio, for us, we are taking the same principles of design, creativity, execution, etc., as well as the canon of the world that we have built and putting it into the format of a video game. So the video game element for us is a format, not the way we do everything. if that makes any sense.
That was the longest elevator ride ever.
It's a freight.
Well, I mean, you can only ride one at a time these days, so you got some space. But no, but that definitely covers the grounds of what Future Proof tries to do and what it is. And it's one of the reasons why I'm very interested in talking about this upcoming video game, because as well, this is a project with a lot of lore to it. And what are the fun discoveries in trying to put a lot of that lore into a more statically interactive element?
It's been interesting because it is, you do find a pretty wide difference in what you would put into a live event, where it's like you can discover stuff, but you don't have to know it to continue on with the game, versus with this game, it's very much, if you're putting it in, you are kind of expecting someone is going to run into it. So you do have to pick and choose a lot more what kind of Easter eggs and what kind of background and lore that you need to make sure that people are seeing. So it is a lot less, I guess, spiderwebby than some of our other events get, where you look at a wall full of goofy stuff from the founder of the company, and you discover that he invented a time machine, and that he's a Batman joke, and that he was friends with horrible figures over all of the past 100 years. Whereas with the game, you don't actually need to know any of that to understand the core premise of the game, or understand who the characters are, or understand what's going on. That doesn't mean that we don't find a lot of joy in slipping in as much as we possibly can without it being too intrusive. So there are a lot of little references, and you do have to build up, of course, the core of what is the context of this game, what is the world that this game exists in, why is the game the way that it is, and you want to build sort of a consistent through line of all the decisions we made putting into the design of the game that sort of grounds the game as something that could theoretically exist in the universe of the rest of our content.
Very cool.
I would just say we have a canon that has gone back for the last 4 years of live events and digital media, which spans a fictional history merged with the real world of the last, I think, 100 years, if we don't include the sunken treasure ship. It has over 200 fictional characters, 7 major corporations, 18 different fictional sponsors, between 10 and 30 different Reddits and fictional websites. And to try to stuff all that into a 5-hour text-based video game adventure would be madness and miserable. So what we've basically done is make this something that is standalone, that doesn't require essentially any prior textbook reading before you experience the game. It is its own title set within the world that plays by the rules of the world we've built, but it does not require any prior knowledge beforehand.
That's excellent. I feel like a lot more games are leaning that way, right? Like if we look at the modern gaming landscape, even franchises that have been around for years have started to lean into, well, here's what you need to know. Go have fun. Like I've seen a lot of people posting about Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which is the newest one, the Viking adventure, and that like most of the Desmond related future tech stuff has kind of been stripped away. And now it's just like, you're a Viking who's part of Assassins and go have fun. And I think that's a smart thing to do, because once you hit the amount of games in like double digits, or lore that's in the double or triple digits, like you guys are talking about, it makes sense to kind of condense that. So like people who know the lore will find stuff and have fun, but those who don't can just kind of dive in and experience it at face value.
For context, I gave Matt next to no warning about Future Proof. Like, I don't think he knows anything about this. I don't think he knows, I think he knows I'm an actor in it, and that's about it.
You mean he doesn't know about Dino's Pizzeria and Bouncy Castle Emporium and Synthetic Cocaine Warehouse, not been legally fined since 1996 of any child injuries?
Exactly. Or our sponsor, Sweet Emulsion.
Oh, I see you noticed my beverage.
Yes, no, I know. We have defictionalized so much of our weird fiction. And I suppose for just for those listening at home, I know a few people listening have experienced Future Proof. Future Proof, the quick and dirty version on that, as far as not getting into all of these characters and all of these other things, one of the big monolithic pieces is a film distribution company that is setting to give people 110% more fun in their cinematic viewing experiences and to usher in a new age of no spoilers, cinema, and chivalry. And it never gets less absurd than that. And part of that interactivity that came through before the idea of a game was becoming a reality, the very first events that we did were film screenings that allowed people to vote on their phones, on the Wi-Fi in the movie theater, to change aspects of the movie-going experience. Things on screen and the things in the theater. So, in its way, those would start off as 2 or 3 choices, which would then branch off and had their own endings and their own things, with, real consequences that would move on to the next event, which is very much the cornerstone of all of this. But I think that also transfers very well to the visual novel experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that I would like to add to that, going back to your question about Discovery, Lux itself, big spoilers, is run by an artificial intelligence, a completely feckless one that is limited by not only its hardware, but its prime directives, which are exactly what you have described, Geoff. And my particular job in the company before we started making a video game was more towards bridging the gap between the narrative department and the actors. My whole thing was really getting a deep dive into the characters of our universe and how they tick, because, even though we are telling goofy stories about robots, there are a lot of very human people who play very human characters and sometimes very non-human characters. But one of the things that I discovered was this game is actually the deepest character dive I think we have ever done at this company. And I'm not talking about all of the characters that we made up for this video game. I'm talking about the artificial intelligence itself. Because in universe, it is the artificial intelligence's decision to release this video game, which means that the video game has to adhere to all of the same rules that this AI would have. And answering that question of what does that look like when a robot tries to release a video game that would do anything to make sure that the player has fun? I think that was probably the biggest discovery for me, was actually, I feel like I finally met Luxos in more than just the capacity that we have been communicating for the last few years.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting to that point that in all of our events, you get some touches of there's a big spooky AI that's running all of this. It's trying to make you have fun. It's sitting there ominously, hovering in a giant cube over you, threatening you with more and more fun. But very rarely do you get an opportunity to interact personally with it. There have been a couple times here and there, but overall, this is definitely, like you said, it was very interesting because we spend so much time with Luxos as a concept. But this game has really made us spend time with Luxos as, for lack of a better word, a person. And I think that has been really interesting in the way that you have to treat the characters when you're developing them whole scale in a video game differently than when you're developing them as, concepts. And even the difference between the characters of the game that aren't Luxos and the way that we would write them versus how we would write for one of the actors, because a lot of what we do is let the actors bring a lot of their idea of the character and what they want to do to the performance. But with the video game, every word that the character says is specifically one that we have to agonize over. Every sentence, every comma, a lot of commas that have to be removed. But it's a very different writing experience.
And to be fair, this, as you said, this is sort of a whole cloth experience, because there was a previous Future Proof event where there was a pseudo video game. There was a text adventure, if I'm not mistaken, that was also within the construct of Luxos.
So one of the things that we do a lot in our fictional universe is what we call period research. We build all of our props, our sets, our content, etc., based in a particular time and place. But our events are still set in the present day. So our fictional company basically stopped producing things at around 1997 and has been recycling the same assets over and over again since then. And ironically enough, the game you're mentioning takes place in the same fictional operating system that this game exists in. If we're going meta plot here, it was technically the chat function within the said operating system that this game is set. So we're not only playing with an artificial intelligence, we're playing with an artificial intelligence that was made on the cheap and has to recycle assets. So it means that interacting with this device in-game especially, not only does it have to be given, let's call it a human face, but it also needs to articulate that it is working only with the materials that it has at play within the system parameters of a very particular time and space. All of this is to say, oh my God, did we look at so many 90s VNs in preparation for this project.
Makes sense. Well, and Liana, a question for you in particular, because you have a history of TTRPG, all kinds of things as a DM, as a content creator, as a writer of adventures. And
I do.
You do. And it's very interesting to, I mean, I've worked with you and seen the work you do for the live aspects of what Future Proof is, for tabletop RPGs, for a lot of 5th edition D&D adventures where there are, in much the same way, there's avenues and paths, but you kind of have to work with the organic inputs of people going, well, I'm going to cut that rope and ride the chandelier that you just happened to say was there, all the way to, well, everyone just has to make choices in this game. They can only push so many keys on the keyboard. And I wonder about the difference of experience and how the branching plot lines and what that does for writing.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to get a little bit of insight into my tabletop writing strategy that not even the Dungeon Masters Guild knows. Please don't tell them because they'll think I'm cheating.
We'll cut this out.
This is fine.
When I write adventures, and sorry, Scott and Geoff, who have playtested my adventures, both of you, neither of you have ever playtested an adventure that has been published. Because what I do is I will write things and then I will say, I wonder what should happen here. I don't know. Maybe I'll farm my players for answers. And that is usually how I write the endings to the adventures that eventually get published on the DM's Guild or in other places. And so, looking at something and being out of ideas and saying, well, that's somebody else's problem, or me for a later time, is not the winning strategy in video game writing as it is in tabletop writing.
I don't know about that. And many a time, Leon, I know that while we were outlining the game, we said, funny joke goes here. I don't know. That's the writer's problem. Fuck those guys.
That is. Yeah, well, I talked to the writers, Scott, and they are not happy this week.
They sure aren't.
They're not happy with the designers.
Now, speaking of that, one of the things we've already talked about and one of the things of Future Proof is metaplot and the idea of things on top of things. And things break down, but it's all part of the show. But is it, but isn't it? And it is wonderful to have those, please insert asset here, thank you, when something's not there. I had a chance to playtest an early build of this, sort of an internal thing. And I had a real hard time knowing when things were not there because it was intentional or because it was still in development. And I don't know if that means I've had too much Kool-Aid, if that means we're all doing a really good job here, or what. But where do you make the decisions to draw the line there to make it deliberate chaos?
Are you upset because we put you in the game without your permission?
I was terrified when I saw my goddamn face! It was after midnight!
You signed a contract, Geoff. We got the rights to your
The
likeness.
game broke and I spoke to me! It was so
Jeff,
weird!
did the game break or did you?
For those of you just tuning in, we have coerced Geoff against his wishes to perform as a spokesperson in our fictional universe, and has performed as essentially the generic spokesmodel for the company, John Point, with an E at the end. He is technically, I think, John Point 11,010.
You can check the LinkedIn for John Point.
Yeah, the LinkedIn has the current series model. But as a generic spokesmodel, that means that when the company's AI has to have a human face in the game, it means that we have to put Geoff's human face in the game because Geoff is the spokesperson. So you're welcome. Thank you, Geoff.
Thank you. No, more to the point, yes, that felt very intentional. when John Point showed up in the game, but there is a certain amount of charm and nebulous boundaries, porous boundaries of meta throughout Future Proof, even before it became a video game or a video game project was going on. And people like to break video games, especially when there are choices. People like to break games. We see this in tabletop games. We see this in immersive theater, not just the immersive theater we made, but all kinds of other things. People just like poking the boundaries. Where do you go? Well, we're going to make an interesting corner here, or we're closing this door, or yeah, you know what? You're gonna run past the sprockets, Daffy Duck, and then have to jump back onto the film.
Yeah, we definitely do some of that. I mean, in the past, we have very much gone all in on the idea of there is no boundary, of everything kind of bleeds out into everything else. Of, you know, you meet a character at an event, that character has a website where they're going to tell you insane conspiracy theories, et cetera, et cetera. And then you go down the rabbit hole and find out that character has a YouTube series and they have a Facebook and yada, yada, yada. This game, very much, we had to make a very conscious decision, like how much of that are we going to do? Because it could very easily balloon from we're going to make a video game to we're going to make like 3 video games and they're all interlinked and there's 18 websites and 15 new characters. It could very easily have happened. We had to very consciously like limit ourselves.
I'm proud of you that it hasn't happened.
Yeah, right. I mean, not to say we didn't do it at all, of course. It's sort of one of the things that we try to do at least once in anything that we make is have a moment where the piece of media you're in becomes a different kind of piece of media or touches on a different aspect of our universe to, you know, solidify that it is a universe. It's not just one sole singular thing that we've shotgunned into the ether, hope you like it. It's all part of a connected whole. But we did have to make very specific choices with this because, you know, like you said, people like to poke at the boundaries and see what else is out there. And with a live event, you can rely on humans to sort of adapt to what people are trying. If they try something you didn't expect, you know, we have Leon on call to come up with a DM solution, or we have actors that can manage that on their own front. But with a video game, it will only do what it has been programmed to do. So you have to make sure that if you are having it pull one of these moments of, you know, pull back the curtain, fall into a meta hole, that you have to do it with a lot of intention. Because if people try to poke at it, you don't have an opportunity to try and railroad them back on the right course.
Leon, how do you feel about the patch?
I think that I hope that one person thinks that is the coolest idea and posts it on Reddit. That's my hope. So we have a mechanic in our game where the game breaks, which I know is what we have been talking about. So the game breaks in very specific ways when the player interacts with it in the way that the artificial intelligence does not want you to interact with it. So there's a weird balance of, you know, the game itself trying to force you down the path of doing the things you shouldn't do, and then the artificial intelligence coming in and saying, whoa, don't do that. And one of the things that happens is when you make a certain set of choices and you go down a specific path that maybe the artificial intelligence does not want you to do, the AI can't handle it and the game crashes. And I guess here's my GameFAQs hot tip for those of you who might have gotten to this point at home and not realized that that's not the end of the game, is we made a website that has a patch that you can go on and download the patch. So our game breaks intentionally and then fixes itself intentionally. And that patch kind of is the key to seeing sort of that second aspect of the game, that moment where it turns from a funny visual novel about, you know, dating your productivity software to something that is a little bit different. And so, yeah, I think the problem, not the problem there, but the challenge there is making sure that people have options once they see something break, you know, and we've tried to make it look as much of a jokey crash screen, a jokey breaking sequence as possible. Like there are some games that make, you know, crashing look like very intentional. Like if you look at Doki Doki Literature Club, that game quote unquote crashes and you're like, oh wow, spooky. I should keep playing. And so, there are games that have done it. And I think the challenge there is making sure that it is kind of teetering on the edge, maybe not suspension of disbelief. Maybe you really are in free fall of disbelief in that moment where you have to believe that the game has crashed, but also believe that it is all a part of the action.
That's excellent. I think that incorporating meta, it's pretty common in games these days to find meta moments, right? Like, I mean, Undertale made a career of many designers from just breaking the fourth wall constantly. I've mentioned this on the podcast several times, but I guess spoilers for Undertale, which has been out for a while. But I killed Goat Mom my first time through by accident and then immediately reset it because I felt bad. And Flowey called me on it immediately. And I was like,
same.
what
Same here.
I had the exact experience. Yeah.
And so, like, when you incorporate something like that into a game intentionally, well, before Undertale that did exist, Undertale is one of the more popular indie games, especially of a generation. So it kind of pushed that kind of thinking into the spotlight. Do you feel any kind of pressure to live up to that kind of legacy of like these other gamers like Toby Fox who are just trying to fuck with the audience? There's my one curse of the episode. Like, do you feel this obligation to also do that without going too far?
I feel that if we tried to hold ourselves to the standards of things like Undertale and say we must be at that level, that I mean I personally would crumble into dust and blow away like it's it would be awful. I would die. But I do think that there is a lot to be said about, like, I absolutely played Undertale. I loved it. And I really did enjoy what it did with sort of the fourth wall breaking meta elements. But it also, there could be, if we really wanted to hold ourselves to that standard, it would be an immense amount of pressure, be the bottom of the Marianas Trench level of pressure. But I think, trying to do something that certainly has callbacks to it, but is different enough to be its own thing does alleviate a lot of that. And especially since we're drawing on a lot of previous existing content that is totally different in tone and style, it does alleviate a lot of that idea that you have to live up to that standard.
Instead of falling into that pit of, our game has to be as good as these things that we love, I like to take that idea and spin it on its head and say that our game is a reflection of the things that we love from other types of media, right? So I love Undertale. Toby Fox is a genius. And one of the things that I will say is that we do have touchstones from games like Undertale. One of the things that is clear in my mind to me as a touchstone as I'm working on this is not actually from Undertale, but the very first moment from the Undertale sequel, Deltarune. When you download Chapter 1, the very first thing that happens is you open the end user license agreement. And the only thing that it says is in all caps, you accept everything that happens from now on. And normally, like, you would see, like, if you open the Apple one or the Microsoft one, you have, like, pages and pages of stuff that nobody has ever read. But Toby Fox was straight up like, I'm going to use even, like, the legalese area, like, this very technical part of the game to tell my story and to set the tone. And, like, that kind of touchstone to me is something like, I want my players to feel the same way that they did when they read that message from Toby Fox when they hit certain beats in our game.
That's awesome.
We have a couple internal mantras that we repeat on this project. One of them is, as much as we are fans of Doki Doki Literature Club, don't accidentally make Doki Doki Literature Club.
That's a good one.
And as part of that, we are in, as I like to say to other prospective partners and investors, we're in the small joke trade. That's where we really ply our craft. So anything that we make, while we may talk about, making a game that breaks or glitches, it is all in the service of the lowest common denominator of humor, not in the service of trying to blow our audience's minds. One of the other things that we really go out of our way to remind ourselves is that we are not reinventing the wheel. And so there is no reason why we shouldn't look to other examples as things to celebrate and build off of, as opposed to it has to be something different than this, or it has to be better than such and such. This game in particular, we have a ton of different influences and reference points. Obviously, DDLC, all of the Tokimeki Memorial Games, of which there are 7 billion of them.
Yep.
Earthbound, etc. Snatcher was a big one, even though that's Hideo Kojima and his friends made a movie, the video game, the first one.
Why not?
But our top line influence for this project is Windows with Friends featuring Matthew Perry and Jennifer Aniston, because quite honestly, the experience that we are trying to create is more accurate to that realm of awfulness as opposed to a particular parody. Another thing that we go out of our way to do, because we are so focused in making things period appropriate, is that instead of exploiting or making fun of visual novels or the visual novel community, we go out of our way to make sure that this is a proper visual novel and something that enhances and celebrates the things that people who play these games would like, which by the third part kind of devolves into what even are we doing anymore, man? But I will say that the overall experience we're looking for is something that is enjoyable for people who play VNs, not a turnoff. And that's a big deal for me, especially.
Well, yeah, and I love that because, I mean, especially with visual novels, I feel like in the indie game generation, and Geoff and I have talked about this a lot, like visual novels have flourished in a way where I feel like they weren't really allowed to in previous generations. And I think also it's everyone has a computer now. Even in their pocket, they have a computer. And like Dream Daddy runs on iOS. Like it's come so far as a medium. And so I think that it's really, I want to date dads on iOS. Who doesn't?
I want to go to Bird High School and date birds.
Right?
That's amazing. Bird High School.
That was one of the game. That was it was funny when Leon and I were starting this. We each had played I had played Doki Doki and Leon had played what's that game called?
Hatoful Boyfriend.
Yes, Hatoful Boyfriend. And so we swapped. It's like, I'll play Hatoful Boyfriend, you play Doki Doki. And so coming back from that, Leon's like, wow, that was rough, man. And I'm like, I dated birds.
We had a very different experience.
I became the Pudding King, or whatever the hell that route was.
We all learned about the power user function together, too.
There you go. But like, I love this idea of games that look like they are inhibited by fake restrictions, like you were talking about before with like the user assets. Like the game we talk about the most on this podcast is Shovel Knight, a game that looks like it was made for the Super Nintendo, but it absolutely could never in a million years run on a regular Super Nintendo. And so I'm curious where you guys push those boundaries. Like clearly you're making a game that is limited in its resources to the 90s and this larger narrative, but you must obviously push it a little further with the modern tech to see like where is it important for you to do that in the sound and the graphics. Like how do you kind of skirt those edges a bit?
Is that something that I need to answer?
I think that's a you one.
I think I'm the one that manages the content. Yeah. So a couple different camps. When it comes to art, we had to create a project that was in universe by a fictional company. And with VNs from the 90s, one of the conscious choices that I made was this should feel like a knockoff. And this should feel like it was made by a studio that is not from Japan, but the art style needs to emulate it. So we ended up using Snatcher as our go-to because that is a game made in Japan ripping off Blade Runner. So we're like, we're going to do that, but the reverse.
Recursive ripoffs.
Yeah, trying to make a visual novel. So the character designs are a more Western style than a traditional VN anime style, especially because in the mid-90s, it's a very particular build. But we did limit ourselves to a color palette to create the pixelation effects. They're all hand-painted. That said, if we were to paint them in 16-bit, it would take for frickin' ever.
Right.
So it's 64 bits. No one playing this game is going to look at it and go, actually, that's not... Because if you look at games like the original Prince of Persia, I mean, the things they could do with 16-bit look like they could have been 24 or 48. You can't even tell. It's a matter of splitting the difference. Our backgrounds, instead of lovingly hand painting all of them, I just built an automation in Photoshop that does math and goes, the image is now 1024 by 768, index it into 8-bit color, now resize it back to a full 4K image, and then split the difference, layer it. There you go. Look, it's pixely. We're fine. The ramp's there. It looks like a pixel image. And they look fantastic, but we didn't actually hand draw every single thing on a Super NES cartridge. Because while we could do that, and there are people who do it and are phenomenal at it, that is not our specialty, and to try to create that infrastructure in the time frame we had would have been mad. All of that said, we're currently remastering the music to be recorded on 16-bit, and one of the artists that worked with us recorded audio on a Game Boy, And also the animatics are all going to be done in 12 frame style, and so we kind of split the difference. We pay a lot of attention to the particular look and feel. We go out of our way to emulate it, but we cut corners when we can and should, just for the sake of our own sanity and also for the sake of just audience enjoyability. If we wanted to accurately recreate a bootleg 96 game, the frame would have to flicker every 25 seconds and it would have to crash every 3 clicks. And we could do that if we wanted to be historically appropriate. That's a cool idea. Not for something on the Steam store.
That's fair.
So, yeah, we do have a line, and it does come down to, does it read? Is it faithful to the source material? And is it going to be enjoyable for our people that are playing it? That's really what we care about as a bottom line.
Can't ask for anything better than that. Now, how do you feel about this being a lot of people's first look into the world of future proof?
Honestly, I'm actually pretty okay with it, because a lot of our content can feel at first blush like there's a lot here. There's a lot going on. Where do I start? Who is that? Why is there a palm tree inside? Why is the robot looking at me? Please stop looking at me.
Why are there so many pelicans?
Why are there so many pelicans? And you will never get an answer to the pelican question. But it's interesting because this is actually a very self-contained experience. It's very much, here's the information you need to understand what is going on in this game, and a little bit extra for, to flavor. But it is, I think, our most straightforward piece of content we've ever done. And I think it might be one of the more I've never heard of this company. I don't know what's going on. I like VNs, purchase on Steam Store, and be able to have some idea of what's happening and context for why you should care. And that's not to say you don't get that at the events, but you're also inside the event there. You have a lot more investment in what's going on because you are physically there. With the video game, I feel you have to be a little more straightforward on what you're presenting to people and keep it relatively self-contained and sort of self-fulfilling on the information you set up at the beginning comes into play at the end kind of stuff.
I think that this is the most personal experience that a fan of our universe can have with a major character in our universe. And it is a major character who does not get enough, they really don't get enough face time with the audience. So when we do live events, one thing that I've noticed, because our users, they determine the outcome of the event, right? Like which faction should they side with, who should go home at the end of the night with the super special treasure, that kind of thing. And what ends up happening is that the actors, with, the fact that they're real human beings, typically end up being the ones to win over patrons. Patrons will have a favorite character. And so Luxos, who is the artificial intelligence, aside from being the big, scary voice, disembodied voice, and has, several very charming, not quite human counterparts, despite all of that, I find that it's difficult for our users or our patrons, our audience, to really get into the head of who Luxos is and what they want and why they should side with Luxos as opposed to anyone else. And so I'm really, really excited for people to play this game so that they can look, I don't know if this game is going to convince you to like Luxos, but I think it might help you understand who Luxos is and kind of help you navigate that world and that decision-making once we start doing live events again.
If you ever wanted to fully understand the personification of a rogue spreadsheet data tabulation program housed in a reel-to-reel mainframe in a bunker in Medora, North Dakota, that has alternate cells that split and subdivide and bounce off a 56K modem beamed off a Russian satellite in order to try to harvest people's personal data in order to tabulate equations to make votable movies better, to achieve the dead wishes of a Walt Disney hack. This is the closest approximation we've gotten to concisely explaining that in under an hour and a half.
And that's the elevator pitch.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, a very broad, sweeping element of the human experience, whatever that was.
Yeah, and also you learn the true meaning of chivalry at some point.
Probably Christmas, too. Who knows?
So y'all mentioned a bunch of different influences, certainly for this project, but we do like to ask our guests a bit about their own video gaming history. Like, what were the games that have stuck with you from when you were growing up?
That's a big question.
I know it is.
We ask big questions here.
Tell us about the project. Tell us about your life's work. What games do you remember from your childhood? These are the big ones.
When I turned 6 years old, my parents gave me a cherry Game Boy Color and 3 games. The first was the Powerpuff Girls Bubbles game. The second was a Looney Tunes game with Tweety and Sylvester. And the third was Pokemon Yellow version. I have not skipped a single Pokemon release since that day. So I play a lot of games. But before I was Leon, the TTRPG designer, I was Leon, the living Pokedex.
Amazing.
To the point where, like, there used to be, like, kids on the school bus being gatekeepy dorks, you know, like, oh, I bet you don't know what a Meowth is. And I would bet that I would know more than them and then scam them out of all of their Pokemon cards. So not only am I a huge Pokemon fan, but I'm also a bad person. But yeah, I mean, I love Pokemon. I'm currently playing the Crown Tundra DLC. Just caught Giratina finally with my friend the other day.
Nice.
I play a lot of other games too, but there are also 2 other people who you are interviewing.
And?
Yeah, that's fine. We don't need to talk about them. So I love JRPGs from the Super Nintendo era.
Because you're a person of taste.
Right.
Yes. So Chrono Trigger
Yes.
and Earthbound are 2 of my favorite games of all time. And I know I actually have to impose a filter on myself. I have to press the Leon stop talking about Earthbound button. I've had to press that on myself several times while we were working on this game.
Steve literally called it before this call.
I have had to, and I get it, you know, like not everything is about Earthbound, but it is sitting kind of on the.
But isn't it?
It is though, and that's a subject for a different podcast. But like, it really is, because it is sitting right in the center between Dragon Quest and modern role playing games. Because Shikisatu Itoi was like, I want to make Dragon Quest, but about children in America in the 90s, and I don't know. It just is a beautiful step for the medium, and I think about it all the time. And the music is great, and I know Scott hasn't played it, but he might as well have, with the amount of scenes that I have brought up to him about Earthbound.
I've heard a lot. Yeah, that doesn't excuse me. I still absolutely need to play it, and I will not be complete until I have. Someday I'll get there. It's on my list.
Here. I'll be honest, I haven't played Earthbound all the way through. I finally finished Persona 3. Maybe I'll take a break and play Earthbound.
Oh, Persona 3.
Yeah. I think the first rehearsal we had together, we talked about Persona 3.
Yes, we did.
Like, I was just starting it then. I finished it a week ago. I put 143 hours into it.
Good Lord.
That's okay, I'm sorry. Can I ask you a question on this podcast?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Fantastic. Who did you date?
Who was my first choice?
Yeah.
Yukari.
Can I actually look? We made a dating sim, so I want to tell you. Can I tell you my Persona 3 dating story?
Please.
Yes, please.
I visually reacted to the fact that you dated Yukari. I love Yukari. That's fantastic.
She's my favorite.
She's wonderful.
And I'm looking forward to doing the Femme playthrough so we can be best friends.
Yes. So I played Persona 3 Plus, which is the one that allows you to play a girl. And so I did play Minako instead of Minato. And I met Akihiko, who, for those of you who have not played Persona 3, Akihiko is your jock senpai who he loves steak. I think he's the boxer.
Yeah, he's the captain of the boxing team. He is a beautiful idiot. He's wonderful.
He is a beautiful idiot. I love him so much. And so Akihiko, it was love at first sight. Every chance I could, I spent time with him. I think whatever stats, it's been years since I've played this game. Whatever stats I had to max out to get even the opportunity to hang out with Akihiko senpai were like, I was on it. I looked up. I didn't really look up all the guides. I don't like using guides when I play games through the first time because I always accidentally spoil myself. So that's what we call hubris. I played through the game and it takes you all the way through until like January. I forget what.
Yeah, it's from early April to the last day of January.
Early April to the last day of January, right? So things were happening. You know, it's all a whirlwind. And sometime in the middle of late November, Akihiko and I went out for steak bowls. He asked me. I went up to him after school, and I realized that we had maxed out our social link, which meant that we were getting on, and we were really close. And I went up to him after school, and he was like, "Let's go get some steak bowls." And I was like, "Yes, Akihiko senpai, anything for you." We go to the restaurant and we order the steak bowls, and he's really enjoying his meal, and I am really enjoying the company. And he says to me, "You know what, Leon, I really like this. I like that we're doing this together." And I was like, "Yes, Akihiko, me too." And he was like, "You and I were so close, and I need to tell you something. I will always be your senpai." And that was the end of the cutscene.
Oh my God.
And I was like, hang on, what? What? No. We were gonna date. Like that's the whole point. And I went and I looked on a guide, and I trolled through every single choice. One choice. In early October, I had made the wrong choice. One binary choice that I had missed. And then hours into the game, I had played with not making any save states. And I got senpai zoned because I told him I liked seafood bowls instead of beef bowls one time.
And Akihimbo senpai just turns you down.
That's rough.
So upset. It's fine though, because after that I got a robot girlfriend. So, Persona 3 is a good game.
Video games are great.
It's on my Steam wish list. I will play it eventually.
I still have to get around to 4. I just picked up the new Persona 4 Steam release, and I'm getting there.
Oh, I'm confused. Persona releases. I can't keep them straight.
Persona 4 Golden.
4 is my favorite.
I got to play something else between maybe I just play the dancing game and then get into Persona 4.
There it is. Yep, that's it.
Just diving in on that. Okay, so Scott, if not necessarily games that have stayed with you, but what were your systems growing up? Were you more PC? Were you more consoles? Was it handheld?
I think I started with handheld when my uncle gave me his original Game Boy, original Game Boy, black and white, or I guess green and black, but
Yes.
And
the PSweet brick.
Yeah, exactly. The brick that would eat 4 AA's at a time every 2 days. And that was basically my first system. I'm trying to remember what I even played on that. Mostly Tetris and Super Mario Land, I think. And then from there, it was a little bit of N64, Rampage World Tour, Super Mario 64, Mario Kart, the usual suspects. Although I do remember I got Yoshi's Story, and I played Yoshi's Story. I didn't quite finish Yoshi's Story. And a kid I was friends with, I think it was in Cub Scouts with him. We made a trade. Well, just a temporary trade, theoretically. He got Yoshi's Story, and I got GoldenEye. It was a good trade. It was a very important trade.
One of those trades has aged better than the other.
Certainly.
But in the moment, that was a good trade.
It was a great trade, yeah. And then I got really into PC because my mom started working at Sierra Entertainment, who were the people who were some of the first, one of the first adventure games with graphics company. I think it was Ken and Roberta Williams and Mystery House, I think, was one of the first consumer PC games with graphics of any kind. I could be wrong about that because it's been a while since I've looked it up, but it's something along those lines. It's some seminal where it came out in the early 80s, I think. But that company went on to make things like King's Quest, Police Quest, and more importantly for me, the Impressions Games line of city builders. Actually, funny enough, right around the same time, if I have my timelines right, that Disney's Hercules came out. They also that company came out with Zeus, Master of Olympus, which was a Greek city-state city building game, and I put too many, as my grades could probably attest, hours into it, and I still play it on occasion. It's actually on Steam now. It got a re-release, a remaster, whatever they do. But the two of those, Disney's Hercules and that game combined, I suddenly got really into ancient Greek mythology and stuff like that. And then my mom went on to work at Xbox, so we got a free Xbox and a whole bunch of free games. So I guess I was doing that now.
You were the kid.
Yeah.
Your mom works at Xbox.
My mom works at Xbox. I get all the free Xbox stuff. So that was great. I got that, Halo, and which was quite an upgrade from GoldenEye.
Little leap.
Little bit. And then from there, I did console gaming for a while, and then eventually I got a good enough desktop to run modern PC releases, and I've just kind of been PC since then. I think I still have a PS4, but it's an entertainment center at this point. And it was funny because I started hanging out with a bunch of people who also played video games throughout like my youth, like up until I was probably 15. No one I knew played video games. It was the weirdest, most like, and like I was growing up in Washington State, which is like, you know, Microsoft's there, Nintendo of America headquarters is there. It's got a video game land, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, until I was like 15, I didn't really have any friends to play video games with. And then finally, I got some and discovered I was awful at video games. Like, I thought I was hot shit. And it was like, no, you suck at video games, my friend. And then I got into Dark Souls because apparently I'm a sadomasochist. And that made me get okay at video games. I'm still not very good. I try.
The bare minimum to play those games has got to be at least okay. So like, which is out for me.
I mean, you could just die a lot. You don't want to be good to do that.
It's true. Get slightly better doesn't have the same ring.
It really doesn't. It doesn't roll off the tongue.
Get incrementally improving with every iteration, just not the same. You know,
yeah.
I mean, it acronym's great. Gee, but you know,
improve slightly. Yeah, it just doesn't have the oomph.
And Dark Souls, you got to have that oomph.
You got to have that oomph. But yeah, and then I fell down. Actually, I think Shmei, this is your fault. Then I fell down the rabbit hole of Paradox grand strategy games.
That is a big hole to fall into.
It's deep and wide, and there is no bottom. I think
that is a hole I stay away from.
That is, it's a. I mean, I love them to death. They're great games, but oh boy, do you need free time, because they eat it. They eat it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I think I'm currently playing a game of Europa Universalis 4 as Russia, and it's already. I'm probably 3/4 of the way through the run, and it's already eaten probably 30 hours through one playthrough. And there's like God knows how many countries to play as and things to do, and it's giant. And then recently, Crusader Kings 3 came out, which I've had a lot of fun with. That game is very different from the Europa Universalis series, because the former is, or Europa Universalis is like your traditional, you're going to play a nation state and you're going to run around and conquer stuff and get bigger and paint the map your country's color. And Crusader Kings is very different because that one's set in more of the you're going to grow your dynasty through royal marriages stuff. And it's actually interestingly character based. You get a lot more opportunity to like think about who the character you're playing is. And there's a lot more opportunities for ridiculous role play because they have these bizarre traits they can get. Like you can accidentally become a cannibal. You can create your own religions where you're a nudist, so you can be and what. Meanwhile, you have smallpox, so you're running so you're like an 80-year-old man running around with smallpox naked, and you have to sit there and wonder, this is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife. How did I get here?
How do I work this? Yes.
Yeah. And so that's a fascinating game in terms of you'll like, yeah, I'll marry this part of my family off to this guy for an alliance. And then down the road, it's like, congratulations, you're the
cannibal Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, and meanwhile, and then later you're like, wait, I'm the king of Sweden? How? And it's like, oh, cool. 300 years ago, I had one person married another. Now I'm the king of Sweden. Neat. Also, we all have hemophilia. That's fun.
Moral of the story, divine right of kings is bullshit.
Yes, it leads to a lot of consanguinity? Something like that. A lot of incest. It's not good.
Well, and on that note, we have one left. So why don't you tell us a little bit, also in the similar lines, like your early days of gaming and then kind of like what you're doing these days with games?
Well, one of the first games that I was allowed to play as a child was Doom 2 on my father's computer. Followed shortly by Quake 2, which was a massive upgrade in graphics. Mm-hmm. Then I moved on to such blazing hits such as the Busy Town game and Putt Putt Goes to the Zoo.
Putt Putt. Yes, Putt Putt.
I was a Putt Putt kid. But I was also a kid whose parents loved him very much. So when I was young, they got me a Sega Dreamcast with the following 3 titles: Rippin' Riders, Sonic Adventure and Echo the Dolphin Defender of the Future. And the Sega Dreamcast taught me that everything you love will eventually die and be destroyed and turn to ash. Echo the Dolphin Defender of the Future, not just the Echo franchise, but the Sega Dreamcast Echo the Dolphin is fucking mind-blowing. You go back in time, you mess up the time stream, there's an ungodly difficult portion with a bunch of water tunnels suspended thousands of feet above the ground that requires precision timing on a terrible controller. It's a masterpiece. The final boss is just a big pile of goo. It's great. I will take responsibility for introducing Mr. Bullock to Paradox games. I have a category of games titled Games I Can't Play Anymore. These include anything made by Paradox. Most recently, I've been a fan of Surviving Mars, Frostpunk, which is not a Paradox game, that's an indie title. And also, I'm an early access follower on Industries of Titan. I also love the Subnautica franchise. I supported them through early access, Astroneer, etc. I can't play any of these games because they become very close to my day job, because I start having to manage finances and object placement and different assets. Like, I was a huge Ark fan before I started working at Future Proof, and now I can't play Ark anymore because I'm managing inventory in real life. So I've had to consciously separate my day job from my fun time. So the most recent games that I played that I guess I would put under games that have made me cry were Into the Breach, which, those poor time travelers, they'll never be able to save us from the kaiju. Disco Elysium was an incredibly personal experience for me, and I played it multiple times. It is an incredible masterpiece of a video game. And I'm going to give a shout out to Ghost of Tsushima, because I'm now currently halfway through the new Game Plus on that. And I know everybody likes to joke, haha, particles, haha, it's got a Kurosawa mode. But that game's story is fucking deep, man. Like, if you play all the way through it, it gets to some pretty well orchestrated, written, and developed characters, and that's something that you really don't see out of a AAA title very much these days. In a way that Ghost of Tsushima really stuck with me. So, yeah, get your kid a Sega Dreamcast. Teach him the meaning of failure. Great.
I mean, as far as mottos go, that's a pretty strong one, I have to say. And you're not the first person who has talked at length about Ghost of Tsushima, which has been on my to-play list. But like anyone who plays video games at all, your to-play list is like 300 games deep. But
yeah, the backlog is strong,
endless.
But I've heard as far as AAA games though that Ghost of Tsushima is unlike anything else out on the market, especially if you like action games with deep stories. And so you are just another person who has inspired me to pursue that game as soon as possible.
Yeah, if you're going to pick between one or the other, play Disco Elysium first.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I've heard
if you got to prioritize your backlog.
Yeah.
Disco Elysium is incredible.
Oh, we should, just because as Future Proof has had a couple of game nights in terms of, like, let's all get on the computer and play something. So I feel we should mention Phasmophobia. This is what we've been playing recently. We've been hunting a lot of ghosts.
I've heard that game has been glorified in its ridiculousness and its brokenness, that it just it functions so well, and it's a well-made game. But there are moments, like the buggy moments are just as fun as the deeply scary, ridiculous ghost hunting moments.
Oh, absolutely.
It's definitely got that valley of, it was clearly made for VR and then took a different path in life. Like, it moved into a different school system. But it honestly, it's one of the better co-op games I've played in a while. It really does encourage and promote cooperation. It does it in a way that's not combat focused, which is a nice change of pace.
Yeah.
Like, there's a ghost that will kill you, but you don't need a gun. You throw a cross on the ground, but it ain't going to save you. And it also crosses over into that nice territory of, like, Guess Who mystery identity games. So it has a nice way to get people involved that normally wouldn't play video games. We've got some people on our staff that have participated just by watching a stream and, like, having the wiki open, like doing paranormal research.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I will say once again, though, a game about a truck full of at-cost video equipment being unloaded into a space in a limited time frame in order to capture the proper information to present and gain a profit is very close to our day jobs. And we have had several instances of people getting promoted and demoted to head of AV. It's been fun.
Amazing. That's excellent. You all have been so phenomenal. Thank you for taking the time to chat with us. And Geoff lies a little. I was aware of Future Proof, and although I've not made it to a live show, I have followed some of the progress. And
I did exaggerate, yes.
But I am very excited to know that y'all are making a video game, because I've wanted to be more engaged with it. And now that live performance seems to be a thing of the past, at least in the nearish apocalypse, I'm excited that people are going to be able to jump in on this thing that's truly trailblazing in the way that it engaged with media and gaming and just meta in general. And I'm really, really excited for people to experience that. Before we close out, I would love for y'all to plug where folks can find you individually on the internet, and then where they can find everything Future Proof and everything about the game that's coming out.
Leon, you're our resident celebrity. What's up?
Oh, yes. Hi, I'm Leon Barillero. You can find me on Twitter at Barillion, or on my website, barillion.com. Do you want me to spell that?
You can if you'd like.
Oh, yeah. BARILLEON.com.
Excellent.
I think our the game website is the PSweet is a good game.com.
Now, is that sweet like a suite of software, or like the flavor suite?
Like the flavor.
These things are important.
Well, it is very important. It's very important to be noted, because there are two kinds, and we won't get into that too much. But yes, it is PSweet, the flavor, is a good game.com. But without, the flavor in there. Don't type the flavor.
Don't type the flavor.
Yeah.
I've been waiting to ask this all night. Scott, where can people find you on the internet?
They can't.
Wow.
Don't look for me. Don't do it. Social media was a mistake. We'll stand by that.
And unlike Scott, I will actually fully agree. You cannot find me on any platform. I am currently in the process of disassembling my Twitter account because I'm a very bad business person. But you can find the company that we all work at www.futureproof.site. That is one word, futureproof.site. You can also find our fictional company's BS at www.luxuryuniversalexperience.com. And last but not least, the landing page for the game that you should absolutely buy for price TBA, maybe free, I don't know, don't ask me why you're looking at me, is PSweetIsaGoodGame.com. PSweetIsaGoodGame.com. I've done my job.
And it will also be available on itch and Steam. Ideally, the Steam page should be up around when this episode drops, but the itch page is live. So that is futureproof.itch.io/PSweet. Steve sent me stuff too.
Oh, good.
It's truly an honor to talk to y'all. I've been hearing about y'all from Geoff for so long, and you can bet your ass I'm going to find those who are available on the internet right after this call. Those who aren't, I won't, I guess. Fine.
You certainly won't, no.
If you want,
Never even there.
I'm very stealthy.
if you want to get to know us, buy a ticket.
Yeah.
Come see our shows. Engage with our content. Follow us on social media. Stalk us on the internet. There are many puzzles and clues that are on the purchasing page. You need a PayPal account.
Dear God.
The largest mystery is answered by inputting your credit card number.
Obviously. That solves every mystery.
It's the cheat codes for life. I mean, all these websites ask for the cheat
Engage
codes.
with our content, please.
I now want a credit card where the number is up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, start. Like,
Oh, handly. That would be amazing.
Someone in
Like-
Chase is
like-
recording this and just heard you.
that's my gamer card. Like, it's like embossed in everything. Oh, $1 million Etsy idea.
Ooh, you can you can get like the custom credit card skins.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could probably make it work.
This is a thing.
If you're going to do it, you got to commit and also get the checkbook and the license plate. Just go full
Oh,
branding.
yeah, absolutely. People are going to be so jealous of my gamer cred.
Oh, he just said gamer cred.
Yeah.
All right, we got to go. Geoff, let's wrap this
We
up.
have to shut this down. This is getting worse by the minute.
We haven't even started on the puns.
Oh God, I'm proud of us for not doing too many of the internal bits of this project. It does get into your head.
Credit where credit is due, Geoff.
Thank you. Thank you very much. But listeners, what do you think of this upcoming project? Have you had any experience with Future Proof before? How do you feel about AIs and the dating therein?
Also, feel free to engage with us wherever you engage with podcasts. You can find us on every existing podcast platform, and of course at certainpov.com, where you can join our Discord server, chat about these episodes that you are listening to here, our side series, side quests, as well as many other awesome projects that are on certainpov.com. Also send us an email, funandgamespod@gmail.com, or interact with us on Twitter at funandgamespod. We want to hear from you. Also, please write us reviews. We've gotten a bunch of really great reviews recently. We do see them. We do read them. Thank you for taking the time to say those kind words. We are working our asses off on this podcast, and we appreciate it.
We appreciate any interaction that you have with us, whether just by listening or the questions you ask or the things you bring and being part of the conversation. Because this is a conversation. Thank you for being a part of it. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I'm Matt A.K. Stormageddon.
And happy gaming. Hey.
Oh, hey, Geoff.
What's going on, guys?
Oh, talking about Superman.
Oh, cool. I could talk about Superman.
I could talk some more about Superman.
We know.
I'll bet a few people would want to get in on this.
I'm down.
You know it.
That sounds like fun. I'll do it.
Cool, let's do it. We can call the show Men of Steel.
And you can find it at certainpov.com.
Or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yay.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.